What's up, everyone? Welcome to the inaugural, the very first of many D3Combat.com podcasts. My name is Tainted, and I'm joined tonight by a panel of staff members from D3Combat.com. What I'm going to do is just jump right into the introductions. If you want to learn more about us, what we're doing, make sure you visit D3Combat.com, bookmark it, make it your homepage, be there every day. But first things first, I'm going to go around and introduce everyone. Joining me is GreenHeat, Keizo, Nuaris, and Shep. So first things first, GreenHeat, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Whole new slew of information came out from Blizzard today about Diablo 3, and I'm ready to hash it out.
Oh yes, very, very excited. Keizo, what's going on with you?
Oh, I'm super excited. This auction house shit is amazing.
I know. Can't wait to talk about it tonight. And Nuaris, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I got plenty of notes ready to go.
Perfect. Last but not least, the beautiful Shep. What's up?
You're too kind, my friend. You're too kind. I'm chilling.
Don't be so modest.
Oh, you. Tons of stuff coming out. It's just want this game in my hands now.
It's been years, decades in the making, D3. As we all know, we've all been playing D2 for probably over 10 years, so it's long overdue. So we're going to jump right in, right away, to one of our main topics tonight. In the press event that took place July 27th, a lot of fan sites and media members got to go down to Blizzard, and they saw a lot of the new stuff coming out for D3. But they had a bar on the information until tonight, so we finally get to see what everyone else saw. And one of the interviews, a Blizzard employee stated that they don't really plan on balancing D3 PvP to become an esport. Now, this is kind of strange considering both of the other main franchises, being StarCraft and Warcraft, have long been considered esports and are very competitive and have a lot of following in the competitive scene. So by not balancing for an esport, how do you think this is going to affect PvP and competitive PvP in Diablo 3? All right, so since I started with GreenHeat in the intros, how about GreenHeat? What are your thoughts on this topic so far?
Honestly, although we are really big fans of trying to make this an esport, I don't think it's that big of a deal. As long as they keep the PvP balanced, it will in itself be balanced for esport. I mean, as long as they're not going to try and push it, that's not too big of a deal. I think it'll be okay, and it'll turn itself into an esport automatically.
Yes and no. I mean, I think on a whole, like the PvP thing is going to be okay, and it's going to be really competitive and fun in game. But I think with lack of support from Blizzard in actually trying to make it an esport, it's going to be difficult for other venues to, try and pick it up and bring it to events such as like MLG or, competitive Forefront.
Yeah, similar to the BlizzCon events where they have the WoW Arena competitive tournaments where you see the top-end teams actually going over to BlizzCon and playing live. But that's because Blizzard is supporting the esports scene in that particular game. So if they don't really support it end-game, it's going to be tough to consider a true esport.
I don't think it's that big of a deal because if you have certain specs that are really good, think about WoW. I mean, it didn't really make it as an esport, but it was still very competitive. You still have arena junkies, you still have a few tournaments, and only certain specs are really good. And people will find those specs and make it go. And if there's enough following, it'll be an esport.
I hope so. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a little bit more difficult with backing from, the company that makes the game. Could definitely grow into it, though.
Hopefully
Keizo,
it does.
I think one thing you brought up was pretty interesting where you mentioned the specs. Now, in WoW, at least, there would always be some certain cookie-cutter specs, cookie-cutter comps, and people would just run those, and then it would be kind of like a mirror match. For example, like PMR, Priest Mage Rogue, was huge, and you would end up seeing in the high-end games, oh look, it's PMR, mirror, PMR, and it's basically just who can execute, that one strat better. But I think in D3, a lot of it seems like it's going to be random. A lot of different character builds, rune builds, item builds. So it's going to be a lot different, I think, than WoW, where you don't always have to go a cookie cutter to be viable.
Right, just the fact that you're only going to be able to use 7 skills at a time, you could have the same spec and you could play completely different just because you choose 7 different skills to use. That in itself is kind of like a spec within a spec.
Um,
Yeah,
just
go ahead,
wanna-
Nuaris.
I just want to bring it back to the very basics. When I read an interview on Diablo fans with Jay Wilson, the one they conducted at the press party or whatever, they said basically that I'm not sure if they're going to be having their own like ladder system, because there's going to be really no it seems like they don't have like a ranking system. Like they have a matchmaking system, which means that teams are going to have an MMR, but I don't think there's any publicly viewable arena team ranking or like ladder ranking as far as I know. But I mean, I've read that it's been mentioned in the past that they will have a sort of ranking system, but without any sort of like support like that, I just think it's hard for any type of esport to get off the ground without any sort of like universal ranking system.
Yeah, this seems like a diversion from Blizzard's other franchises, where in StarCraft 2, that just came out about a year ago now, I guess. You have in BNet 2.0, you have the built-in matchmaking, you have the built-in rankings, and all the divisions, all the different leagues with the Masters all the way up to the Masters League. In WoW, you ended up with the arena system as a standard. I'm 1900, you're 2100, you're about 200 points better than me, and people understood what that meant. But if there's no built-in ranking, it's going to be difficult to really be competitive or an esport.
Other things too, I read in that interview that there was no plans for like a rail or an observation, like no replays for matches, and they said specifically that it will make the game feel more like an esport. And in an interview, they were saying how they're trying to not make it an esport and just kind of leave PvP as a side thought, where certain specs or certain characters will end up being horrifically imbalanced. And I'm taking that directly from the interview. Jay Wilson actually said that it might be horrifically imbalanced, but they don't seem to, it's not upsetting them or anything. It's just that's going to be how it is, because it's not the top of their
The thing
list.
about it, they say it's unbalanced, but in terms of every spec versus every spec, big deal. You look at WoW, it's the same way. If you put up a complete arcane mage versus a PMR with an arcane mage versus a PMR with a frost mage, the arcane mage team would win. But if you put up a PMR with arcane mage versus another good combo, they would lose. So they would need the frost mage. So it's all about the spec. You got to choose the right spec, and you got to have synergy with if you're in a 2v2 team or a 3v3 team.
Do you think we'll see like a lot of cookie cutter arena teams, considering like a certain number of skills and the different types of runes that we can put into those skills? Like it seems like it's going to be very, very like a lot of choices and different builds.
I think you're going to see certain combos get popular. And then if you have some kind of armory like WoW Armory for Diablo 3, and everybody's going to copy each other, it's going to be a lot of the same combo. But the thing is, in WoW, it was choosing the right combo at the right time, choosing the right spec at the right time. Hopefully Diablo will not be that way. Kind of like Diablo 2 1v1. I know there's no ladder for Diablo 2, but pretty much any class could be any class in Diablo 2 if you played it a certain way. Yeah.
Now, how do you think Diablo 2 PvP will compare to Diablo 3 PvP? For example, in Diablo 2, you basically would have to gear out a character, stat out a character, and change it just to beat one class. For example, you're facing a fireball source. You want to, get dwarf stars. You want to fire resist, hot spurs. You're planning to beat a fire source. So you face a barbarian, and now you're wearing fire absorb gear, and he just rips right through you. So how do you think that's going to be?
Huh.
I think it's not going to be that same way. I don't think there's going to be as much direct countering with gear. It's probably going to be more skill-based. Like, for example, a lot of the barbarian skills that you saw in the early gameplay videos, they weren't so much similar to Diablo 2 Barbarian. Diablo 2 Barbarian, everything was attack rating based. You needed direct hits. You'd go in there with like Whirlwind or something, and you just have endless Whirlwind battles. In this, you see a lot of the stuff like Shockwave. It's aimed. You have spells that are aimed and do damage based on your abilities,
Yeah.
your gear, etc. So
So do
I
you
think
there's
it'll be a
going to be
lot
a lot of
more
skill shots type
skill
spells?
shots, positional control. So I don't think direct counters will be as rampant, shall we say? Because
Hopefully.
it's just not
Hopefully,
it's not,
yeah,
it's not going
hopefully.
to be the same system.